Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I am Jay Lee. This is Jay Lee's Corner. I'm like, how did I just forget what I was trying to say? Lord Jesus. But yeah, I am Jay Lee. This is Jay Lee's Corner. And this is my review for Greenleaf, Season 2, Episode 12, House Rules. Episode came on yesterday, so it's a day late. But I reviewed three reviews yesterday, so I was just tired. It was a good episode. Of course, I keep saying how much I like Greenleaf. I think it's a well written story. So let's just get into it. We see the beginning is with Pastor Skanks. I can't pronounce his first name, which is why I keep calling him Pastor Skanks. Because every time when I'm watching it and they're saying, I think it's Basie. Because they say it, but I be like, am I going to remember how to pronounce it? I don't know, but I can pronounce Skanks, but I'm going to start saying Basie if I can think about it. So, we see Basie, Pastor Skanks. He's at his church and he's basically preaching. We also see that Darius is in the back kind of taking notes and stuff. You know, Darius is a reporter. He is Grace's boyfriend, we'll say. And he's basically discussing homosexuals and them being accepted into the church. And he, was saying how people, of course, don't accept it, how people say how homosexuality is against as a sin, and people who are gay should not be welcome in church. So he's like, okay, that's one sin in the Bible. Let me give a couple other things that is against God. He then goes into, bringing up how it mentions shellfish in the Bible, but but y'all still going to that crab barrel or that, or eating that seafood, eating that shellfish food. I only eat fish. I don't know about seafood. He also says how, marriage should be honored and the marriage bed should be left pure. He's like, but a lot of y'all came here straight from your boyfriend's bed last night and, y'all still here. He was basically saying, there are other sins that people commit that people don't think about. So if we're going to ban every person who commits any kind of sin that is against God and it's in the Bible, none of us would be in this church. He was like, so that's just, if we're really going to follow biblical law, that's what would happen, because there are other things that people do every day and you're not supposed to. He also he brings up Calvary, Bishop Greenleaf's and May Greenleaf Church. He says, some people like to be like, you can be whoever you want to be. You can be who you are as long as you hide it and don't you dare put nothing on social media like Calvary. I'm like, you just gonna call out Calvary like that? How you in church beefing? Okay, kind of crazy. He like, so I say to you, I say the gay community are welcome. I think it's time to say God loves gays. Now, I don't think God doesn't love gay people. I think that people who have issues with gay people, I try not to give my opinion on certain stuff because it can be very, people can go back and forth with their comments. God loves everyone. I think that's a point blank period thing. No one can question that. I think anyone who does say that God does not love all of his children is batshit crazy. Mainly because there are other sins that people commit, but people do tend to stick a pin in that gay, homosexual, lesbian, pin and say, this is the worst sin. If you're doing this sin, I can't deal with you. If you're gay, I can't deal with you. But if you're a murderer and you're an adulterer, you can see past that. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff. That's how people are. And that's basically what Pastor Skanks is saying. See, I can't remember his first name right now. Basie. So, I understand what he's saying. I'm a person who really do believe that if a person's gay, that ain't got nothing to do with me. That's they cross the barrier. They have to deal with that when they see, when they have to meet with Jesus. That's who gonna handle it. I don't think people on earth should feel like gay people have to answer to them for their sins, because we all sin. Where none of us are perfect. none of us are perfect. So I get what he means there. Because it's a thing of saying, people say, well, how can you be in church and you sinning because you gay? Well, you're sinning doing all kind of stuff. You have people in the church who having sex. You got people in the church who, do other things. You know what I'm saying? So people be in the church sinning on GP. So it's kind of hard for me to say gay people shouldn't be allowed in church because they're gay. I think everyone needs the Lord. Everyone needs God. Everyone needs to be close to our Lord and Savior. So, that's just my point of view. If you don't agree with it, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Next we see the family is basically discussing the story that Pastor Skanks did at his church. Why? Because Darius wrote about it, and so they're reading it in the paper. We also see May and Grace's relationship is getting a little bit better. And I say that because it's little things that they put in here and there. If you remember the first season, May and Grace did not get along. They were very distant, even if they were in the same room. They were always kind of disagreeing with each other. But in this particular scene, you see Grace walk in and May's like, you look terrible, you look tired. And Grace is like, thanks, Mom. But she didn't say it in a mean way, and Grace didn't respond in a mean way. And May said, no, I just mean you're tired. You still having trouble sleeping? And she's like, yeah, Mom, hopefully it'll get better. And I'm like, but it's this still the fact that they're communicating better, that they're worried about each other. You can tell their relationship is getting better, basically. So Bishop, May, Grace, and Charity are all there talking about it, basically. And, Bishop is wondering if by the story that Darius wrote about Skanks and about him talking about how, homosexuality should be, and I don't think when he says homosexuality should be accepted in the church, I think what he was saying was gay people should not welcome in the church because they're gay. I think it's a difference between saying you're gay and I'm happy you're gay and I'm okay with that. I'm a firm believer in you don't have to like someone's choices to accept them as a human being. I don't have to, if I don't believe in one thing and someone else does, it doesn't mean that we can't care about each other. Just because a person's sexual orientation, that they like the same sex, I don't have to dislike that person as a human being, and I don't have to agree with them being gay. You know what I'm saying? Because that's their own personal thing. That's, but whatever. So yeah. They say how Darius did ask the question, was Pastor Skanks using this whole gay situation to kind of get himself into the limelight, to get himself some notoriety? And they're like, probably so. And then Bishop is just pissed off because Skanks mentioned Calvary in his sermon, and he's pissed off about that. And they then question, well, we wonder if Darius interviewed Carl when he did the story, because Carl was the gay choir director that they fired. And because they were referencing how Calvary would accept someone who's gay, but you just can't talk about it. You can't post about it. They were wondering if that came from someone within the church. And Grace is like, I'll find out because I'm meeting with them later on today. May and Bishop also feels like Skanks is coming after their family. Solely because of how they, went after Bishop, how they went after Jacob, how, Grace is some kind of way getting within the scope of Skanks' clutches, basically. And now with him bringing up Calvary and this homosexuality thing, it's like, what is he trying to do? So, yeah. The next thing we see is Jacob and his wife. I believe her name is Kerissa, but it's spelled differently, so it's always weird for me. So Jacob and Kerissa are at home, and they still in that goddamn money trap. That house power been going out since they moved in, so they're in the dark trying to fix the circuit breaker because their house keeps having electrical problems, but they can't afford to have the house rewired. So she's mad because she's like, we spent all our money on, that empty ass lot in this faulty ass house. Wow, my cuss, I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to cuss during this review. all to keep Pastor Skanks' secrets of his gambling. Because if you remember, the reason they got the house was because Skanks owed money to other people. So they gave him money for as much money as they could, which would help him pay some of his gambling debts. And in return, they wouldn't tell anyone that he gambled away the church's money, and they would keep the secret. But they got the land to build a church eventually, and they got that house, free and clear. Kerissa was like, we know, because Jacob is saying, like, we can't afford to get the house rewired right now. We're going to have to just, make do with what we have right now, and that's it. Kerissa suggests, or she says, that money from the Help Me Fund, GoFundMe thing. But from the Help Me Fund has money in it. And Jacob was like, no, we're not doing that. That's the same thing they got Skanks in the predicament he's in, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And, I ain't doing that. Bravo, Jacob. Stand up for yourself. You don't want to do what he did and make the same mistakes. That is all well and good. Carissa's like, look, you need to get a job. You have to get a job. She's like, I can pay the bills normally. Yeah, my income, can pay for the bills. She's like, but I don't make enough money to pay the bills and get the house fixed up. And the house needs to be fixed up. You need to get a job. And that's, he's saying, we're gonna be okay. The lights go out. And she's like, get a job. Because, they need to get the dang on stuff fixed. So, yeah. There's a small scene where we see Grace being taken into the office, bringing files, and we figure out what we remember, that she is taking over the position of the outreach director because Kevin is gone. That's what Kevin was doing. But she is conflicted because she's still trying to figure out where she fits in at Calvary. The assistant is talking to her about, are you ever going to preach again, Pastor? And she's like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where I fit in all of this. I'm trying to be where I am the most useful. And the lady brings up, she says something like, even the best preacher isn't great every day. And I was like, it makes sense. So the next thing that we see is Skanks is at his, Pastor Skanks is at his office, and he's talking to a guy, and you can tell even from the back of the guy that he's a debt collecting hood person. And, he's saying, like, I'm good for it. I've owed you $50,000 before, and I paid you back. I'm good for it. I need some more time. I just need, 2 more weeks. And as he's doing that, Bishop walks in, and Skank sees, like, oh, hey, Pastor Greenleaf, you right on time. He's like, all right, man, I have a church meeting that I got to get to, so I'll talk to you later. So the guy was like, yeah, but don't forget about our business. He's like, oh, yeah, as soon as those programs come in, I'm going to let you know. He's like, yeah, he said, et cetera, et cetera. He said something else. I can't think if I worded it. And he walked out, but Bishop was still looking at the guy like, you don't look like you should be here. You look different. And he did look like a rough and tough, and he didn't walk in when they were having a peaceful conversation. It looked tense. So, but Skanks flipped it quick like it was a regular ass meeting. Then even said, I'm starting to think that you are an angel from God. Meaning, in his head, you just saved me from having this uncomfortable conversation with this bookie debt collecting thug who's trying to get me. So you kind of just saved me from that conversation. So thank you. But he didn't say thank you. But in my head, when he said you are like is that angel of grace or God sent angel, something about how God sent him there to interrupt that meeting. Anywho, Bishop still looking because that man wasn't there for no dang on church programs at all. So Bishop goes into the reason he's there. He like, look, I need you to stay away from my church, stay away from my family, don't bring up my name, just don't think of me at all. And Skanks is like, well, it's kind of hard to tell a man not to think. Basie, Skanks, he has a talking mouth. He's a talker. He like, look, I'm just seeking justice. And Bishop like, you don't even know the meaning of the word. And I'm like, okay, raise your voice, Pastor. Okay, Pastor Bishop. Yes, I want to do it, And then goes on to say how, you tried hard to take me down. You tried to, take Calvary from me. You tried to use my son. And now you're trying to sing a siren song and get my daughter. But you a fool. You've been made a fool of. You look foolish. I won't have it. You won't get my daughter. And then Skanks is like, well, that's up to her. Man, I'm like, Bishop, you gonna punch that man in the face? But no, Bishop, now, he's a peaceful man. He's like, look, you're making a fool of yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're flailing. You're flailing, you know it, and I know it, and that's what it is. And he was like, when you once told me, judgment's coming, he's like, it is. It's coming for you. And then he leaves out. And Skanks, of course, is looking, kind of bewildered because he knows it's true. Because all of his cards are falling down in his house of lies. And, he is starting to realize, everything that he's tried to do to sink Calvary, to attack Bishop Greenleaf, is kind of coming back to haunt him in itself, because the way he was doing things were corrupt. You can't build a corrupt house of cards and think it's going to stand forever. That's just not what happens. Next we see Bishop talking to May about the meeting with Skanks, and like, you should have seen it, May. I told him what to do, and I hope he heed my warning in leaving us alone. And May then brings up, remember we was having the dinner with Jacob and them, and Kerissa was talking about Skanks, and he like, and how Jacob shut her down. She's like, maybe they know something that we don't know. And he was like, well, okay, we should go over there and find out. And, they have that whole thing because they're talking. His assistant then comes in and says, Rochelle's on the line. And he's like, well, tell her I'll call her back. And then May like, no, you go ahead and talk to her. I'm going to go over here and talk to Jacinda about some stuff. So May leave. Bishop gets on the phone. And he's like, what can I do for you, Rochelle? Oh, no, call me James. Call you James? I call you Bishop. Why can't she call you Bishop? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you ain't slick, Bishop. You ain't slick at all. We next see the Grace is going through some of Kevin's files because, of course, she's not doing the program, and she finds those brochures for those, I don't know what to call them, the gay fix-it clubs. I can't think what the proper name is for it. And she's kind of reading through things. So she takes him to Bishop, showing him, like, do you know Kevin was actually attending these meetings and these classes, trying to, make himself no longer be gay? And Bishop like, yeah, I kind of knew about it. And she's like, he was, taking these, drinking different stuff to make himself throw up and make himself sick if he's thinking about it, but he was actively going to these meetings and going to the programs. He was actually self-flagellation? I might have said that word wrong, but it's basically when you whip yourself with the whip when you feel like you have sinned. But I might have pronounced that word wrong. It's Flagellation. But I know I probably pronounced it wrong. And she's like, this is the reason why, some of the things that Skanks is saying is right. And Bishop was like, look, he knows how hard it is to be judged by someone for who you are, to be unworthy based on someone else's opinion. That's the crazy part. And Grace, like, that's the reason we need to support people who are going through that. We need to make them feel supported. And Bishop is like, the problem is, no, Grace is then saying, but my problem, that is, I don't know where you stand. And Bishop thing is, he's like, he said, I feel like, because she's trying to say, when is it going to be the right time for them to be accepted into the church? And she's like, and I don't know your stance on that. And that's a problem for me. And he's like, well, my stance on it is, I feel like it'll be the right time when God says it's the right time, but I don't know when it's going to be. He's basically just as conflicted as anyone else. It's easy to want the right thing to be done, but it's hard to execute it in the right way. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's Bishop's dilemma, that he doesn't have anything against gay people, but he's just not knowing how to introduce the conversation, to how to introduce the acceptance of it to the congregation without it being taken offensively. Being gay is a tough topic in the church, and it's not as easy as just saying everybody should accept it. You know what I'm saying? It's not that easy to want to, or to try to change multiple people's minds and their opinions on things. Sometimes it does take time to open the door to acceptance of things. And I get that. It does, and I'm not saying that it's right for people to not accept it. I'm saying you can't expect anyone who doesn't accept something to start accepting it just out the blue. You know what I'm saying? It's a way to do it, and I think Bishop doesn't know how yet. And Grace is like, why do we keep having to wait for things? Why do we keep having to wait for things to be accepted? Why can't it just happen now? And they're both trying to do the right thing. They just don't know how to do it. So that was their whole conversation basically. And Bishop was like, can I think about it? Can I just think about it sometime? And she was like, sure. And that whole thing is into that scene. Next, Charity and this man, she's like, I don't know what this man's name is. It's that man that she went to Nashville for, and then that man she was kissing. And I really think the man that they have on this season, I don't know if it's the same man from last season, or if I just don't remember him well enough, and I can't remember what he looks like, but for some reason I think it's a different person. I don't know. But anywho, she's in her office, and she's putting on makeup trying to get pretty. And he walks in like, you don't need to do that for me. It's like, oh, no, it's just, he's like, well, no, I'm saying, I don't think a face that as pretty as yours needs, all that makeup. And she's like, oh, okay. So, he comes in, he gives her basically like a little sound box. It's something that she can record demos on when she's not in Nashville. And she can record music anywhere. And at first she's like, oh, so you don't want me to come to Nashville? And he's like, no. And she's like, oh, you don't? He's like, no, I don't want you to come. No, I don't want you to come to Nashville. I do want you to come to Nashville, but this is just something for you to use when you're not there so that you can still be great. And, he shows her how to use it. One of her songs that she does plays, and she's just looking at him just so enamored, like she's just so smitten with this man. And it's kind of, So, yeah, she clearly liked that man. It's a good man, Savannah. Wait, next, though. Next we see May talking to Jacinda. They're at lunch, and their lunch is about to end, so they're getting up and they're kind of walking away. And May brings up Rochelle. She asks Jacinda, how exactly do you know Rochelle? And Jacinda says, oh, she's my accountant. She handles my money. She's really good at it. She's been doing it for, the past few years, and I will be lost without her. She's really a whiz with money. Jacinda then asks how she knows Rochelle. And May says, oh, she's trying to find a new church home, and she's thinking about coming to Calvary, and she's kind of attending our sessions our church for right now, trying to pick a home. May then mentions, yeah, she told me about what happened, at her last church. It was also, it was, she said, I heard about it. And then Jacinda said, she told you about that? And she was like, yeah. So May didn't go into detail about what Rochelle told her. She just made sure that Jacinda knew that she knew what happened. Jacinda then says, it was a terrible situation. It's wrong how when things like that happens, they always blame the woman. They don't blame they don't blame the man as if he doesn't have self-control. So Rochelle told them she left her last church because she had breast cancer and she didn't feel like the church supported her. But from what Jacinda said, it sounds as if she was fucking somebody in that that she was having sex with somebody in that church, and that's why they blamed her, and that's why she had to leave, and no one blamed the pastor. Okay? She then tells May, Rochelle doesn't know I know, can you please not mention it? And May was like, I'll be the, a privacy box of secret, or whatever she said. I don't know how she said it. So yeah. So now May know it's something more to her than what she let on. Next we see Zora in her room with that boy Isaiah. Now, I am not the sharpest pencil and no pencil sharpener. I can see through my four eyes, the two eyes of my glasses, that Isaiah is bad freaking news. Point blank and period. They're at her house, in her bedroom, and the door's closed. And they are studying, doing homework. But he's like, can we take a break? And he started kissing on her. And she's like, okay, we can take like a little 10-minute break or maybe a 1-minute break. And they kissing in the bed and stuff. You know what I'm saying? They kissing in the bed. Then you hear a door open and close. It's the front door. Someone's home. So she jumps up like, oh my God, I don't know who that is. And he sits up in her bed. Their clothes are on, so it's not like they was like naked doing it. But the fact that you're in your bedroom with your door closed, kissing your boyfriend on the bed, that's not a good idea at all. It's Jacob that comes home. So Zora opens her bedroom door slightly. And Jacob was like, I got donuts, da, 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 da. And she's like, oh. And he knows something's wrong. So he just, opens the door up all the way. He sees Isaiah. He's like, oh, hey, Mr. Greenleaf. And then Jacob looks pissed. He looks at Zora. She looks like she knows she wrong. He's like, Isaiah, let me talk to you real quick. So Isaiah does come out. And, he's like, you want a donut for the road? Because he like, because you finna go. You finna go, little boy. He's like, oh, no, I'm okay, sir. He was like, you're not supposed to be in a room with the door closed, right? And then he's like, yeah, I do know that, sir. I just thought. And he was like, how about next time you think about leaving the door open? You think about respecting the home that you think about respecting the roof of the home that is not yours. Be mindful of the rules her parents set in place for her, or think about not coming back. But he said it in a forceful parent, father, I don't want you in the bedroom with my daughter with the door closed way. And he should have, because that little boy ain't shit. Okay, he's not. Oh, I just can't. Just stupid. So the boy leaves, and then he turns and look at Zora. He said, you know better. And she was about to say something back, and I guess God stopped her lips. Or not only that, her father looked at her with the look of utter, I would tear your head off if you even tried to attempt to say anything like you weren't in the wrong. Because again, you know the rules too. And she was like, nothing, and he like, I thought so. And he walks away. For me, I love that scene. It's a scene of a father protecting his daughter, seeing that his daughter is doing something that she usually wouldn't do. She usually wouldn't have a boy in her room. She wouldn't have a boy in her room. So why she got a boy in her room? And he knows something ain't right. So like, I have to be forceful because she might be getting out of control. I love that particular scene. There's a short little scene next where we see Rochelle come to tell Bishop. Because remember, she called Bishop. And so she called Bishop to tell Bishop, I've chosen a church home. I choose Calvary. Okay, we're going to let that go right now. Next, we see Charity. And she's asking Grace, she has plans later. And she's like, yeah, me and Darius are going on a date. Why? And she's like, oh, okay. No, the guy from Nashville. He wants to take me on a date tonight. But, Mom and Dad are going to Jacob's for dinner. You have plans. And I think the maid has plans. So there's no one to watch the baby. She's like, oh, it's okay. I'll cancel. So Grace says, like, me and Darius will watch him. It's fine. The restaurant I was going to get us reservations at doesn't even have reservation for the time that I want to get him for. So it's fine. And so she's like, we'll just watch him. And, of course, she already is happy. When Darius gets there to take her to dinner, she breaks the news like, no, I gotta tell you something. I promised Charity will watch the baby. She had a date. I wanted her to know that I was here for her, that I'm really here to help and do things. So I told her that we can watch the baby. Are you okay with that? He's like, oh, yes, it's cool, I understand. He says okay, but he looks a little bit, disappointed because he wanted some time along with his boo. Because, again, they're together, but they're not together. They're together, but they're not together. So I think he just wants some clarification on where they are. And, it was kind of disappointing that she made other plans for them. So, yeah. The next thing we see is Bishop and May, and they're having dinner at Jacob and Kerissa's house. And, they're talking about the many jobs Bishop had who was coming up as a pastor. Why? Because Kerissa is telling Jacob, your ass need to get a job, okay? And he don't want to get a job. So they talked about that, about everything. Bishop then brings up how, I saw your old boss earlier today. I went by his office. There was a gentleman there, a tall guy, and he kind of described him. He was like, and he didn't look like he was somebody from the church. He was like, is a bishop doing prison ministry? And Kerissa was like, no. And she's like, yeah, I just wonder who it is. When you and Skanks parted ways, was everything okay? Jacob then goes on to say, when me and Skanks parted ways, we got the land in the house. He got his privacy, and I have to keep my word on that. And May is like, but we family. What's going on? And, Carissa's is sitting there looking like, I wish he would just, just tell them the truth. I just hate that he's just on this it's just weird. He was like, what happened between me and Skanks had nothing to do with our family and nothing to do with Calvary. So I can't tell y'all anything. And again, Kerissa is looking pissed off about the whole thing. there's a little scene with Zora and Sophia who are on their way to their cotillion classes. And Zora is on her phone texting Isaiah old monkey self. Just texting. And she's like, yeah, my dad was just so mean to him, that I'm having to do damage control so he won't be mad at me still because my dad was really, really hard on him. And Sophia looks concerned because I know she feel like her cousin is going down this downward spiral with this boy, but she's just so in love. So stupid. There's a scene later on where she's done with the cotillion class and she finally calls him back, and she's like, hey, I've been calling you. I called you. He's like, yeah, I was calling you all day and you wouldn't answer. She's like, yeah, they took our phone, so I couldn't respond. I'm just getting to my phone. How was rehearsal? And he's like, you would have to be there. And then he hung up on her. Just a little runt. So we see that Grace and Charity's dates don't go well. Charity pulls up to the hotel to drop the guy off. He kisses her on the cheek. He's like, all right, see you in Nashville. She wanted him to invite her up or just say, let's go hang out. He didn't do that. He kind of just ended the date and then he left. As far as with Grace and Darius, Grace asked him, hey, did you interview Carlton? And he's like, yeah. And she was like, oh. And he's like, what's wrong? She's like, I just figured you would tell me. And he was like, well, no, remember you said we should keep personal life and my interview and stuff separate. You said that. Do you want to revisit that conversation? And she's like, no, I just thought you might, I just don't know, why didn't you ask my father to do an interview? And he was like, I just didn't. And, she, of course, was just saying how she's still surprised or whatever. And then he's like, maybe we shouldn't date. And then she's like, what? Why? And he was like, because, we, I just don't know where we're going. You kind of keep pulling away. You be pulling away. And now we're arguing. And she's like, well, we're not arguing. We're just talking. He's like, look, you even traded a romantic dinner for babysitter. And now you're picking a fight with me. And then she's like, well, you pull away too, in different ways. You brought this whole job offered by some female, out of the States. You don't talk about why you don't go to church and different things like that. And he's like, you know what? I think I should leave. I've never stuck around with a person who gives so little and they don't even realize it. And then he leaves. So, they both, Charity and Grace, both have bad dates. So when Charity gets there, she's like, the date didn't go so well. He gave you a kiss on the cheek and then he left. It's crazy. Grace is laughing. So they're both kind of laughing back and forth. She's like, I didn't even eat at the restaurant because I was trying to be cute. I'm starving. And then she started eating the food that Grace had for her and Darius. And their sisters, they're just laughing and talking. There was a conversation when she said, maybe I attract the wrong guys. And Grace is like, I don't think he's gay. And they're kind of laughing together. So, that was their whole scene. What do I have left to say? So there was so at the end of the scene where after the dinner, May and Bishop are about to leave. And when they're leaving, Kerissa says, what did she say? Damn it. Oh no, Kerissa brings up the breaker. She's like, Bishop. He's like, yeah. And she was like, we're having an issue with our breaker box. And Jacob was like, Kerissa, no. Don't do that. And she's like, what? Because again, she like, I want the breaker fixed. And you bull crapping. You playing. And, man, like, that's our cue to leave, okay? So they giving kisses and they leaving. And Bishop said to Jacob, okay, son, take it easy. And then he leaves. So now it's Kerissa and Jacob having their conversation. And Jacob like, what are you trying to do? And she's like, I'm a mother attempting to care for the home that I raised my children in. I don't care about your pride, Jacob. Like, it's not about my pride. But technically it is. She's like, you know what? You didn't even look for a job today. I asked you to get a job. You didn't even look for a job, not even online. And he like, you don't know what I did. She's like, well, did you? And he's like, that ain't the point. Because he didn't. She's like, you heard what Bishop said? Bishop said, when you work to pay the bills, it makes the preaching more pure. Isn't that what you want? Meaning, if you're preaching the word to preach the word, you also need to provide for your family. So you can't only preach. That can't be the only income type of job you have. When you're making money doing something else those other 6 days a week, it makes your preaching more pure because it's not about the money. You know what I'm saying? It's not about that at all. And that's not even a thought in your head. And that's what she's kind of saying. And he like, I do have a job. And she's like, no, you have a hobby. People say a job is something that you're paid for doing. A hobby is something that you do because you like it. Like me, I like doing reviews. This is a hobby. It isn't my job. My job is what I do at work that I'm getting paid to do on a, whatever basis I get paid on. At my regular job, videos aren't. YouTube is not my job, it's my hobby. So that's what she's saying. Like, you preaching as of right now is a hobby because you ain't getting paid for it. It's not your job. It's more, people call it more of a calling anyway. And she's like, get a job. And she's kind of yelling at him. And she's like, how can you have your wife and your kids walking around in the dark because the lights don't work? And that's true. How could you have that be done? But wait a minute. She's like, I don't want to hear it, Jacob. And he was like, oh, no, you're going to hear it. He then says, all those years, I was out creeping and, doing all kind of crazy stuff. You treated me this exact same way. I took it because I was wrong and, I couldn't say anything then. He's like, but now I have the morals that you wanted. I'm the man that you wanted me to be. I'm not going to stand for it anymore. You're going to respect it. The Lord will provide in his own time. And we need to wait. We need to wait and be patient. Trust me, trust in him. Just wait. And when he said it, he was like, just wait. I was like, go ahead, Jacob. Because in the beginning on season 1, Kerissa did talk to him like he was a child. And he was cheating on her every chance he got. And as he said, he took it because he was already doing wrong and he couldn't really argue with her. And he's a different man now. He got his morals together. And he has the plan in his head that God has put inside of him to do. And he's like, I'm not going to let you deter me from what God is telling me to do because you want to be more comfortable. People sometimes go without lights. You know what I'm saying? When you struggle, you go through things. And it's almost like she don't want to struggle. You know what I'm saying? She wants to be extremely comfortable. And I'm not saying that's wrong for her to want lights for her and her children. But he's like, I have something on my heart, on my mind that God told me to do. And I'm going to do it. And I can't let you deter me from that. And he's like, you need to be... That was me going off on a little tangent. So the last thing that he does say to her is, what you need to be concerned about is your daughter. She's the one that needs you. Meaning, something going on there and you don't even see it because you're too concerned about me getting a job. Yeah, that's the whole thing. The next thing that we see, Grace gets a phone call and it's late at night. And it's Darius, and he's outside. So she, comes downstairs, and he's sitting outside, and he tells her the story of why he doesn't go to church. It turns out he used to be married, and she's like, you didn't tell me that. And he's like, his wife died. She died. And he's like, they were driving somewhere, they got into a car accident, they were T-boned. She died from the accident, and she's like, at the funeral, he said at the funeral, he was talking to the pastor. He was just asking the pastor for guidance and how he couldn't understand why his wife died. And the only thing the pastor said to him was, you can't question God. And he was like, for that reason, he just had never went back to church because it hurt him and he couldn't understand why his wife had died. That is how people feel when their loved ones die. And he was like, that is why I've been holding back for you. That is my thing. And then he gets up as if he's leaving. And they were holding hands a little bit. So when he got up to walk away, she was still holding on to his fingers. And, he turns back. He looks at her. He says, am I going to see you again? And she gets up, gives him a tight, tight hug. And she says, God, I hope so. And he was like, is that what she said? Because I might have just added that my dang on stuff. Yeah, she said, yeah, God, I hope so. And he said, then that's a yes. And they hugged and kissed a little bit, which is great. So the last scene of the episode, we see Bishop and May talking to Kerissa. And what is Kerissa doing? Telling them that Skanks spent the dang on church's money. Yes, she told the secret because she was tired of the bull crap. Jacob, you want to get no job and you want to talk to me all kind of ways, even though you would talk to me in the right way, you would tell me the right things to do, you were telling me the right things that God put onto your heart to say to me. I'm telling your parents what you told me not to tell. So yeah, she told them, how Skanks basically was spending the church's money, and that is why he's in debt. She was like, the reason we got the land in the house is because we gave him all of our savings to get it so that he can pay back some of the money that he owed people, but he still owed people $500,000. And he like, do you got proof? Is what Bishop asked. And she was like, well, yeah, I got somebody that can prove it, but you can't tell Jacob I told you. He would never forgive me if he found out what I'm doing. And Mary was like, oh, it's okay. Your secret's safe with us. I'm like, Kerissa didn't snitch. Man, look. She told them that he spent the church's money. I'm like, Kerissa, you was sneaky. He asked you to wait. He told you, God said wait. God will make a way for us to make it through this. You need to just wait and trust in the Lord. And you went and told them what you went and told anyway. Whew, Lord Jesus, I was like, I can't believe her. This was a great episode, as I said before. Can't wait for the next episode, because we do see that that Jacob at least accuses her of telling the parents. I don't know if she's going to admit to it, but he is accusing her of doing it. So we shall see what's going to happen next time. We do see that Skanks is a little bit beaten up, so we got to see what happens with that. We see that Zora has a bruise on her forehead. We're going to see where that came from, that punk ass Isaiah. So this is our review for Greenleaf. I hope you guys enjoy. Until next time, I am Jay Lee. This is Jaylee's Corner. Peace.